Are they going to have their lives upended? Do you think that's where this goes, or is this just a press release?
Yeah, I think this could be tricky with the statute of limitations, but we know for a long time that a top priority for the DOJ and the FBI is to get to the bottom of it. As we've said, as affected you, many other Trump administration officials, this is very personal. We've been talking about how it's affected families, how it's affected working class Americans. A lot of people were really harmed by this Russia hoax. And so I think it will be a priority for the Trump administration that is, if there is further evidence, if there's a reason to prosecute here, to really investigate this, I think that they'll go ahead and do it. And so I'm hoping that we'll get some answers. Great that John predicted that. One aspect of this that we haven't talked much about is the part about Hillary and her mental state. There's something in there saying that she was experiencing fits of anger, fits of cheerfulness, and that she was on extreme tranquilizers to calm her down throughout her time as Secretary of State. And I think that that's kind of a smoking gun, that if Russia wanted Trump to be president, why wouldn't they release that extremely negative information about Hillary?
All right, guys, good Thursday to you. We are literally, I can taste the weekend. I can feel the weekend. I'm excited about the weekend. I just need it to be nice. And what a week we saw coming. I mean, every week I always say this, and then I'll say it again the next week. But I did not see any of this coming. The DNI stuff, how the Epstein stuff has evolved. Stephen Colbert acting like a whiny little baby because he got fired and he doesn't get math, but more on that later. Remember, if you watched last night's show, you saw John Solomon on this show predict and say that his sources were telling him that the Department of Justice would announce a strike force. We're going to get to that. It happened that quick. I'm just saying, if you watch this show, you know things you won't find out anywhere else. So maybe you should tell some friends or be selfish and keep it to yourself. That's your call. We got a great panel coming your way tomorrow. Michael Schellenberger is going to be here. That's a first for us. I'm very excited about that conversation. I've been monitoring the chat. I know you are too. And then next week, Robert Cahaley and a lot of other great guests are joining us. Before I get to the panel, though, it is the weekend. You know what I like to do? Omelets and eggs in the morning and grilling at night. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If you want the best steak of your life, the best steak, whether you are a steakhouse snob on someone else's expense account like I am, or you're someone like Larry O'Connor that tries to get everyone to take you out, we'll talk about that later, on your expense account, you are going to want to go to Riverbend Ranch because they are the best steaks, hand down. I grilled these a couple weekends ago. Everybody was excited. I did it again this weekend. I'm telling you, I've tried it all. The strip, the ribeye, the petite filet medallions. I mean, I've never even get those at the restaurant. I can't afford them, but I got those. I had the hot dogs, the beef tips. I can't get enough of the Riverbend Ranch steaks and the hot dogs. I'm telling you, I'm a hot dog snob. I love them. I save them for the kids, and then I steal them myself. These things are better than anything I've ever had. By the way, I also was told to try the beef jerky. I did that. Unbelievable. It doesn't stop, though. These guys, all of the meat, it's none of the anti-growth hormones or the stuff that gets injected from other places. This is literally the purest beef you're going to get. Tender, marbled, 30 plus years of creating the best steaks. They enhance them every year. 21 days aged, straight from the ranches of Montana and Wyoming to your plate. Unbelievable flavor like nothing I've ever had before. You cannot buy these in a store. You cannot get them in a steakhouse. And once you have them, you will not go back. You will thank me. You will be like, holy smoke, Sean, I now do this every weekend. Go to riverbendranch.com. Use promo code Sean, spelled the right way, S-E-A-N, to get $20 off your first order. Once you taste it, you will be hooked. By the way, I get the variety pack. I think I chose the cowboy one. Trust me when you see what I'm talking about. Go to riverbendranch.com. Use code word Sean. By the way, if you're looking something to flavor that steak with or the eggs in the morning, you got to check out what I have here. This is a Firecracker Farm hot salt. This is unbelievable. It adds a kick to your stuff like no before. And you get this free grinder. It's actually not even a grinder. You just hit the button up and down. It's like, they call it a grinder, but it's hot salt. And there are 3 different types of peppers in this stuff. Ghost, Reaper, and Scorpion. And trust me, they don't disappoint. The Ghost, the Reaper, I don't know which one's which, but it's a kick like you've never heard. Megyn Kelly's talked about these. Joe Rogan's talked about it, and it sells out. Right now, they just restock. So if you want to try the Firecracker hot salt, you better get on it because it is a deep, balanced flavor that gets added into whether it's your vegetables, your eggs, your steaks, whatever it is. It was sold out before Father's Day. Good news, folks. They are back in stock with a limited batch. So go to firecracker.farm, not edu, not org, firecracker.farm. Okay, I know they added all these new dots, but it's firecracker.farm. Use code SPICER for a discount just for our watchers and listeners. It tastes incredible. It adds a kick. It's not even that hot. It's just a kick of flavor that you've probably never experienced in your life. An explosion in your mouth, if you will. That's why they call it Firecracker. Firecracker.farm. Use code SPICER for a discount for our visitors. All right, without further ado, our all-star-ish panel. Batya Ungar-Sargon, our good friend on Two-Way, who leads the group chat over there. She's the author of the amazing book Bad News and Second Class. She's a columnist for the Free Press. And by the way, doing a bunch of fill-in work on News Nation, which the only reason I ever stay up past like 8:30 is when Batya is filling in. I'm sorry, Leland Vitter, but it's true. Elizabeth Mitchell, our good friend, the White House correspondent over there at the Daily Signal, and the fill-in for the third seat. That was drawn through a YouTube lottery. Our friend Larry O'Connor, the host, he's the co-host actually of O'Connor and Company at WMAL, and has a great show called Larry on Town Hall. I mean, seriously.
That's also name.
Larry. I mean, okay, it's a fun show, but I mean, I thought that when I had to call it the Sean Spicer Show, but you just went with Larry.
Well, that's because there are a lot of Seans out there. You're just one of many, but there's only one Larry. And Sean, thanks for picking up the check the last time we had dinner. I have to say, in all honesty, he did. He picked up the check, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, well, someone has alligator arms. I'm just saying. Larry's like, oh, did you get the check? Did you get it? I had to go to the bathroom. Seriously, I've never seen anyone go to the bathroom at the
Meredith texted me. I stayed there, and she said, "Okay, he picked up the check. You can come back now."
I know. By the way, I was like, "How long can you possibly stay in a bathroom at dinner?" Larry, I find out now. I know why your wife was like looking on her phone. She was trying to say, "It's all clear. You can come." Larry's like, "Oh." Anyway,
don't hate the game.
All right, I want to start with the Tulsi bombshell yesterday. I want to play you guys a clip of the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, explaining all this, and then we'll react. But here is her yesterday explaining what this information was to set the table. Go.
There are still people, won't surprise you, within the intelligence community who don't want this information to see the light of day. Some of them may be implicated in the crafting of it. Others are concerned about people being embarrassed. Others are concerned about accountability and what else we will discover as we continue down this path towards the truth and bring about accountability for the American people. That's really what this is all about and why it does such a disservice. I was standing there in the White House press briefing room and hearing some of these crazy questions being asked by members of the media who are trying to distract and deflect away from the historic expose that we have brought forward that once again puts into question the American people's ability to trust the integrity of our democratic republic. And the reason why that is, and it's similar to the deep state actors who have been trying to stop us from releasing this, is that we have members of the media who were complicit in this from the very beginning, who were leaked early copies of this, or at least lines from this January 2017 Obama manufactured intelligence assessment. They printed what they were fed. People like Ellen Nakashima from the Washington Post, who, by the way, went on to win a Pulitzer Prize because for years she was so good at lying and not telling the truth to the American people that they gave her an award for it. These people are still here.
Now, Batya, let me just set the table for folks, because as I said yesterday, this is personal. I was on the 2016 campaign. So the idea of delegitimizing the victory that we had then, to me, is a big issue. Then we spent a ton of money litigating this. Many people's lives were upended financially and otherwise over the Russia hoax. The two things that I think are important to understand is there were two narratives coming out of that. Number one, that Russia colluded with President Trump and his campaign team. And I've said all along, again, the Mueller report confirms this. Never happened. No way. Apparently, we couldn't collude with ourselves during the campaign, and then Russia's responsible. That was ridiculous. But then what we learned yesterday in this dump that I think is significant is that this idea that Russia, well, they always wanted Trump to win. Well, that's not true. They stopped interfering in the election in September. They thought Hillary was going to win, and they actually held back information because they wanted to screw with her after she was, quote, elected. So the narrative that the media pushed was false. And the problem is that when you go back to the base, and this is the thing, Batya, when you look at the information, it appears as though the intelligence was manipulated from the jump to create a narrative that wasn't supported by the facts.
I really want to believe that, but I just can't quite get there. To me, the main culprits of the Russiagate hoax is the media. And I think that this report out of the DNI, who I respect, I really admire Tulsi. I think she's a huge patriot. I really think this is actually undermining the severity of the Russiagate hoax because it is hanging it on something that I think just does not have quite the punch that they are making it sound like. So I just want to read to you the whole argument, it seems to me, and tell me if I'm not understanding this correctly, but it seems to me that what she's saying is that there was a report that was suppressed by the Obama team, and then another report that was put out. And the report that was suppressed would have proven no collusion between Trump and Russia. And the report that was put out suggested that there was collusion. But if you read the two reports, they are actually incredibly similar. And in fact, Obama himself in December of 2016 went out there and said to the nation, no voter tallies were changed as a result of the Russian meddling. And the idea that the Russians had leaked information from Hillary Clinton, that was true. The idea that they were trying to undermine her, that was also true. And then to me, even if you accept the narrative, to bump that up to treason, I'm very upset about this. And the reason I'm very upset about it is because to me, that seems like it's trying to feed the media, and it is actually distracting from the immense and unbelievable accomplishments of this president. So I am very angry that all of yesterday was spent on this instead of on the trade deal with Japan, which you cannot imagine the significance of that trade deal. Like, you cannot fathom how many American families are going to be catapulted into the middle class, struggling families, because of the way in which this president is rewriting the economy. He is the only person on planet Earth who could have delivered that. And instead of forcing the media to acknowledge that by making that A1 above the fold, the story of the day, he went out there and called Obama a traitor based on what seems to me to be not strong evidence. And so that became the story of the day. I'm very sorry. I know everybody doesn't agree with me on this, and I apologize, but I have to say what I think.
Yeah, no, I have great respect for you about you, but let me just correct a couple of things here. First of all, if you're angry that the media isn't covering the trade deal, don't blame the Trump administration, because the media didn't cover this story either, okay? They ignored Tulsi Gabbard pretty much yesterday. CNN cut away during the middle of the briefing. So that's not the Trump administration's fault. Let's be clear here and clear this up. If you're angry at somebody, you should be angry at John Brennan. The CIA director disregarded all norms in gathering intelligence and reaching a conclusion. He overruled career professionals at Langley. They determined what the outcome was going to be. Obama didn't say, hey, figure out what happened. Obama said, we know what happened. Russia successfully interfered in the election, and he did it to help Donald Trump. Neither of those things are true. But that's exactly what the intelligence community assessment said. They went out and found enough partial pieces of intelligence that had been disregarded up until December 9th, and they used that bad intelligence to support that premise. And it worked. You've seen the video montages of people in the media and elected officials for 2 years repeating the lie, Russia hacked the election. Russia hacked the election. They didn't. They bought some Facebook ads. They didn't change the outcome, and they didn't do it specifically to help Donald Trump. There was no evidence to support it. This is a scandal. And the intelligence community, led by CIA Director John Brennan, led by DNI John Clapper, and FBI Director James Comey, at Barack Obama's direction, manufactured this assessment. They lied under oath about it, and they should be held accountable. That's who you should be angry at. That's who I'm angry at, Batya.
All right, Elizabeth Mitchell here. What is the Daily Signal writing about what happened yesterday? Did you guys cover the trade deal? Do you think the DNI report is significant? What did you guys look at yesterday as the news, and how did you report it?
Yeah, I was at the briefing yesterday, and something that really stood out to me is, to Batya's point about the media, is that the media, of course, told us that Trump is a threat to democracy, that he colluded with Russia. That's all part of this hoax. But now we know, I think, if there's any threat to democracy here, it's the fact that Obama had this evidence that the Russian hoax was in fact a hoax and purposefully hid that from the American people. I know that people in the first Trump administration were greatly hindered from doing their jobs by this hoax. They were constantly pulled away from the White House to go testify and talk about the Russian hoax and speak to this thing that really wasn't actually an issue at all. And I know that those people particularly feel very vindicated now to see that the media is now forced to cover that it wasn't true. What they were pushing for all of these years, what took them away from their jobs so many times, took up so much of their time that they could have been using to instead pushing forth the America First agenda. Now they're vindicated and everyone knows that it was a hoax.
Yeah, well,
So-
the media wasn't forced to cover it. They
Yeah.
gladly covered it. They were part of this.
So Batya, first of all, on the trade deal, and we can talk about that later. I agree with you. Like these are big things. Market access is huge. Investment in the U.S. huge, right? So put that aside for a second, because I'm not sure they would have covered it anyway. But I do agree with you. It was you could have forced it. You could have made it a big deal. Had all of the key folks, Howard Lutnick and et cetera, Jamieson Greer, the U.S. trade rep, in the briefing room, forced it. I still don't know that they would have covered it because they probably would have pivoted to Epstein. That being said, and admittedly, Batya, I will tell you, this is personal for me. Because I look at the campaign and said, we pulled a rabbit out of a hat. We worked really hard. The president campaigned and and spoke to the American people in a way that no one had, and won an election fair and square. And the idea that the legitimacy was questioned is something that hung over of us for months and years. Okay, but that was at least somewhat vindicated by the Mueller report that said no collusion. But then this idea yesterday that we find out that they knew the narrative wasn't true, that Russia actually was supporting Hillary Clinton. They thought she was going to win because, frankly, most people did, right? I mean, the New York Times, everyone else said, hey, we think there's no way Hillary Clinton can lose to this guy, Donald Trump. So it's not that far-fetched to see the intelligence that says Russia saw what everyone else saw, which is that Hillary Clinton was supposed to win because that was the prevailing narrative. To find out that they knew that and then allowed and suppressed that information and said, let's promote information that we know isn't true, a fraction of the data of the intel, to make it seem like Trump is being assisted and they are hacking to benefit him, was a false thing. And they entrapped Mike Flynn. They created a narrative that to this day is pervasive. And so I get your point on timing, but the significance that people who were at the highest levels of the U.S. government potentially were involved in colluding to weaponize information is got to be, to me, among the highest priorities. So I'll flip it on you. Where am I wrong on that?
Okay. So first of all, I hope it's clear. I think the Russiagate hoax was one of the greatest, if not the greatest, scandals of American history. It's a horrifying thing that they did, not just to Donald Trump, not just to you, but to the nation. How many people are dead of fentanyl overdoses because the president couldn't get his agenda done because he was busy fighting this crap, okay? Right. I'm very angry about that as well, okay? I don't want that to be misunderstood. But to prove that they knowingly concealed information, from my understanding, and again, I could be wrong, it hangs on them having replaced certain reports with other reports. Let me just read you from one of the reports that they allegedly suppressed, which would have vindicated and shown that the Russiagate was a hoax. And then I'll read you what they released, which allegedly shows that they knowingly lied. So here's a report from September 12th, 2016. That they allegedly knowingly suppressed. It said, Russia probably is not going to be able to influence the election by using cyber means to manipulate computer-enabled election infrastructure. Russia probably is using cyber means primarily to influence the election by stealing campaign party data and leaking select items, and it is also using public propaganda. This fits a historical pattern of Russia. Okay, this is what they allegedly suppressed, which allegedly was not so damaging to Trump. This is what they then released, which is allegedly so different that it proves that they knowingly lied on Trump. This is from January 6, 2017. We assess Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election. Russia's goals were to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate Secretary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. We assess Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for President Trump. We have high confidence here. And then it says Russian intelligence obtained and maintained access to elements of multiple U.S. state or local electoral boards, But the DHS assessed that the types of systems Russian actors targeted or compromised were not involved in vote tallying, meaning that the whole thing hangs on whether when the first report, which everybody thinks is like the good report, says that they released leaked data in order to influence the campaign, which we know was Hillary Clinton's campaign data, right? Like this whole thing hangs on that leaked data was not the data we know it is, but we know it was Hillary Clinton's data. So to me, it's just they don't have the smoking gun to prove the intent.
Okay.
Now, again, these people all behaved very poorly. But Yuval Levin has this great quote. He says, Washington would be so much easier to navigate if everybody showed up and went, he, I'm going to destroy the country. But actually what happens is a lot of people show up and say, I'm going to save the world and end up doing very bad things. Russiagate was about the dying gasps of the elite control of this country against the wonderful working class populist revolution represented by Trump. It was horrible. It was horrible. And a lot of people who have not yet gotten apologies from the right people deserve them. I don't want to undermine that at all. I just don't think that this is it.
But I think you're great, and I think your heart is in the right place. Let me fill in a few of the blanks here, if I could.
Please.
First of all, the report in question, the presidential daily briefing, was not the one in September. It was the one on December 8th. That was polled, and it did reflect exactly what you said, that Russia did not have the means or the interest in changing election outcomes in terms of the vote tally. That was polled because Donald Trump was the president-elect at that time, and he would have seen it. That's why they pulled it, and that's why they came up with the brand new narrative.
He said that explicitly.
Right. But hold on a second. By the middle of 2017, 66% of Democrats believed that Russia, at the guidance of Vladimir Putin, changed the election outcome to benefit Donald Trump. That did not happen by accident.
That happened
because of a controlled narrative, backed up by this intelligence community assessment that Putin wanted Trump. And then there were also whispers that there was collusion. That's why we had the Robert Mueller investigation. James Comey going out there after he was fired saying, I don't know if the president is a Russian asset or not. Yes, he did. Okay, so they were creating that narrative falsely. They knew better. They lied, and it was all to undermine the Trump administration. It was meant to plant the seed that Trump was an illegitimate president. It was the most deteriorating kind of operation on the American people. And you're right, people died because of fentanyl overdoses, because Trump couldn't put his agenda out. There are also families that were ripped apart by this. There are children who still won't talk to their parents today because they think their parents supported a Russian puppet. It is horrible what was done here. And please don't downplay it. This was calculated, and the paper trail proves that it was calculated. That's what we learned yesterday.
I'm just saying, you're trying to put that 66% of Democrats, you're trying to hang that on Obama's neck when Obama explicitly went out and said the voting tallies weren't changed. There was a lot of...
But at the exact same time, they said that Putin successfully interfered with the election, that Trump was Putin's preferred candidate. He talked out of both sides of his mouth. They may not have changed the tallies, but they did hack the election. It's the same thing.
You can't. They sort of wanted it both. By the way, I got called in, and senior officials at the RNC with me, by DHS right before the election to a private briefing, and they said, we want to prove to you that this election will be safe. It's impossible to hack. And we need you. See, they thought Hillary would win. So they wanted to get us on the side of saying that the election was secure. So they said, we need you to instill confidence in the system. And we want to prove to you that it's impenetrable. You can't hack these various voting systems because we have a disparate voting system. So Ohio, a county in Ohio and a county in Alabama don't use the same system. Therefore, you can't hack it. But what the DHS wanted us to do was to say, guys, it will be helpful if you could go out and say that, we've shown you all this, it's not penetrable, and therefore you have confidence in the system, because they believed Hillary would win and Trump would undermine the system, confidence in the system, that is. And so it's funny how now, to Larry's point, as soon as Trump won, they were like, maybe it could be hacked. And it was like, wait a second, your briefing that you gave to me and other senior officials at the RNC was, you guys need to express public confidence in the system because you can't hack it. And then once Trump won, it was like, oh, crap, maybe you can hack it because we don't want people to think that Hillary actually lost. But Elizabeth Mitchell, I want to advance this story for a second. John Solomon's on the show last night, and I asked him, what is the tell? How do we know? So Tulsi says, here's all this stuff. Here's all this declassified information. Don't get my hopes up. Don't get me excited like Epstein and then kind of Lucy with the football on this thing, right? So how do I know that this is real? And John Solomon says on the show last night, I have sources that lead me to believe that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, will announce a strike force, which is an entity which will pursue this. I said, okay. He said, I am telling you it's potentially imminent. I thought, okay, John Solomon's got great sources. He's got a good track record. And lo and behold, what happens last night after the show? DOJ announces a strike force.
Right.
So Elizabeth Mitchell, my question to you is, do you have hope, belief, confidence that this is more than just an announcement and that there will be an investigation into people like Ben Rhodes, National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, Clapper, Brennan, Comey, etc.? Is this going to move forward the same way that there was a Mueller probe and an investigation to all of us for something we knew didn't exist? Are they going to have their lives upended? Do you think that's where this goes, or is this just a press release?
Yeah, I think this could be tricky with the statute of limitations, but we know for a long time that a top priority for the DOJ and the FBI is to get to the bottom of it. As we've said, as affected you, many other Trump administration officials, this is very personal. We've been talking about how it's affected families, how it's affected working class Americans. A lot of people were really harmed by this Russia hoax. And so I think it will be a priority for the Trump administration that is, if there is further evidence, if there's a reason to prosecute here, to really investigate this, I think that they'll go ahead and do it. And so I'm hoping that we'll get some answers. Great that John predicted that. One aspect of this that we haven't talked much about is the part about Hillary and her mental state. There's something in there saying that she was experiencing fits of anger, fits of cheerfulness, and that she was on extreme tranquilizers to calm her down throughout her time as Secretary of State. And I think that that's kind of a smoking gun, that if Russia wanted Trump to be president, why wouldn't they release that extremely negative information about Hillary?
Exactly. And that's the thing. All right, Batya, I want to pivot for a second, because one of the things about this issue and the MLK issue from earlier this week is the Trump administration has been extremely transparent. They're releasing these files, they're getting stuff out, they're uncovering stuff. It's sort of like, remember that game is like on, I think it was like Sesame Street, speaking of PBS, that went like one of these things is not like the other. Like, I'm like, the Epstein file to me, it's like you're doing all this stuff. And yet with Epstein, we've got DOJ saying they're going to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell today. Walk me through, I just can't get my head around how the Epstein thing ends, goes away, until there is some forcing mechanism, i.e. a press conference with Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, Pam Bondi, maybe Kash Patel, I would get the cast of characters up there. I would add Harmeet Dillon and Ed Martin. I would make it as MAGA, like to show support. Guys, we're going to put it all out there. But like, I don't see how the Epstein thing goes away when on one hand, you're being completely transparent with all these other things. And on the one thing that a lot of people felt like you built up because you gave them a binder and now you say, oh, nothing to see here.
Yeah, again, I feel like I'm going to be so hated for saying this, but I thought Trump was actually handling it really well when he was just like, no one really cares about this. Like normal people, like we have now a lot of polling that shows that like normie Republican voters just really don't care about this. It's the influencers and the podcasters and the people who make money off of content who really built up their careers in some cases on this story, who really want the Epstein files, who Pam Bondi, some of whom she made them look like idiots with that binder. But I think Trump, never underestimate Trump's understanding of where his base is at. He just has a genius for understanding, not just his base, by the way, where that like 70% of Americans who usually like nobody pays any attention to are at. And I thought his initial like instincts to be like, this is just going to roll over. Like, this is not a big deal. Normies don't care about this. They care about the accomplishments. They care about standard of living. They can't care about, safe streets and everything that he's doing good. I thought that was like a really good avenue. Just starve, Steve Bannon always talks about flooding the zone. Starve the zone. Starve the zone. Talk about the great stuff you're doing. So I was a little bit surprised to see the pivot this week with, the DNI and all of this stuff. I think probably a lot of the Epstein files are full of stuff that are like will leave the stench of Epstein on people like our president who haven't done anything wrong. So, for example, we know that Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago reportedly after Epstein hit on the underage daughter of a member. Trump was like, I never want to see you here again. This is what I read was reported. Of course, that's going to be in the files that they knew each other before. And when Trump found out he was a creep, he was like, I never want to see you again. But the stench of the association, especially what the media is going to do with it, is going to ruin a lot of lives, which is why I just don't understand this like hunger for it. Like, I just feel like it's full of names of victims, child pornography, and names of people who either did things wrong or in many cases probably didn't, but their lives will be over because of this stench.
Larry O'Connor, you make all your money off this. You're one of these people. You're not a normie. I know that. But I see this. I will say I get Batia's point because for the longest time, but what I've come to really see is that for a lot of people, it's a proxy. It's you're transparent on everything else. Why not just put it out there and if there really is nothing to see here or if it's all gross, we'll move on. But why can we show out a bunch of DNI evidence from 10 years ago? Why can we throw out the MLK files? We can't just do this. Explain, pick up off of what Bati was saying. Like, why do you care about this? Why are you thirsty and hungry like you've never been before?
I'm not personally. I'm not one of those radio hosts or podcasters that really has made a killing on the Epstein story. Although I'm rethinking my career choices now that I see what benefits some of these people. But I think that Bhatia is right in that any name that may be included in these files, whatever they are, will immediately be presumed guilty until proven innocent. That's not how we work in this country. And so I am sensitive, and actually I kind of respect the fact that the Trump administration and the Bondi DOJ are like, listen, if we put this out there, these names, this is not, if they have enough evidence to prosecute someone, freaking prosecute them. Otherwise, that's not how we operate in this country.
But Larry, this is that goes back to my point. Like, this is where I think you hold a press conference and you go, guys, here's the deal. You want to see what the files look like? I'm not going to show them to you, but here's a stack. And you know what it is? It's child porn. It's inappropriate. It's disgusting. It's a bunch of names. But here it is. And then here's this other stuff. But like, to say look away isn't
right. I agree. My idea is not a press conference, but I think they should handle it the way Elon Musk handled the Twitter files. They should bring in even the same people, have Schellenberger, Taibbi, and Barry Weiss, give them the tranche, have them sign NDAs, have them get cleared with all of the stuff, and have them go through it and have an independent review of journalists that have done this before. And they'll be able to tell it without actually revealing things that shouldn't be revealed. And I think that would go a long way to helping people. I just don't think government officials telling you this at this point is going to wash with anybody.
Can I just make one more quick point? Very briefly. I sat on a grand jury in New York last time I had jury duty for 2 weeks. You just see, it's like a rolling thing. The standard of evidence is much, much lower. You as the grand jury get to pose questions to witnesses. We can call for information that will be by definition excluded as prejudicial in an actual trial. There's just a lot there that it is not appropriate for like regular people, I think, to consume when you think about, like Law and Order.
All right, I want to start a new segment. Let's see how this goes. You guys are the test group. And I want to go through a series of issues relatively quickly, but kind of on a prediction type of scale. And so I'll lead into it with what we're talking about. There's a lot of talk today. DOJ supposedly meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell. So each one of you, I'll start with you, Elizabeth. One, whether she testifies in front of Congress or meets with DOJ, does she advance this case anymore? Does Ghislaine Maxwell, here's the question, I guess. Does Ghislaine Maxwell have anything of substance that will matter in this case? Yes, no, or in between?
Well, I think we can all agree she's probably not the most trustworthy person, and she has an agenda. She'd like to get maybe a plea deal of some. She'd like to get out of jail to some extent, so she might not be the best source of information here. But I definitely think it's worth talking to her just to find out if there is anything we can uncover here. It seems like with Epstein dead, it seems like one of our best leads possible is to speak to her. So would I guess talking to her would reveal any information? I would say maybe some information, but nothing that answers all of our questions.
Larry.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's hard to put stock in a convicted pedophile child trafficker and say this is going to expose all of the truths. There's no truth to be found with her. Unless it's backed up by paperwork and other evidence, of course.
I am like utterly uninterested in anything that comes out of that person's mouth.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's go back to the subject we talked about a minute ago. So we announced the strike force, DOJ. The question, starting with you, Elizabeth Mitchell, is anybody, and Batya correctly brought up the statute of limitations that exist on a lot of these crimes, right? And Barack Obama is the president, therefore he'll claim presidential immunity. John Solomon yesterday suggested maybe indict him as an unindicted co-conspirator so that it's on the record, right? So the question that I want to pose to you, does anybody, full stop, anybody get charged with a crime? Not are they guilty. Do they get charged with a crime by DOJ for what was released yesterday? Elizabeth Mitchell.
I do not think that anyone's going to get charged with a crime. I think it's good that we have this information and that the people who suffered in the Trump administration for the hoax have been vindicated in this way, but I doubt that we'll see anyone charged.
Larry O'Connor.
They've got Brennan dead to rights on perjury. They should pursue it. And if they pursue the grand conspiracy charges that encompasses the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, that's something that people should look at. If some of the files at Mar-a-Lago connected and exposed the truth behind this story, they can make the case that the Mar-a-Lago raid was engineered to retain those files. And that becomes a Florida conspiracy where a Florida grand jury and court will look at it. And that makes it a lot easier to get a conviction.
Sounds like someone's been talking to John Solomon. That's he kind of had a similar point off of the bank shot of indictments, and that would get around the statute of limitations as well. Batya?
I know this is like hopelessly cringe and annoying, but you know, where does the cycle of retribution end? A lot of people, like my husband, has never voted before in his life. And when they raided Mar-a-Lago, he said, I cannot stand to see this happen in my country. The weaponization of the justice system is appalling. Going after political adversaries is appalling. And he voted for Donald Trump. I hope he's okay with me saying that. Anyway, like that
for the next 3 years, he's fine. And then after that, it's a jump ball.
That feeling of like, this cannot be, I think motivated a lot of people to vote for Donald Trump. And I think it's probably like not a great look to have been the victim of all this and then turn around and say, actually, forget it. I know I promised 1 million times to end weaponization. We're doing it now.
I know, but you know what? This isn't weaponization. If there's a real crime, it's not weaponization. That's the difference.
Say that, Sean.
I'm just telling you. All right. There's a lot of talk right now in Washington about rescissions and reconciliation 2.0. I'm going to group them in one bucket. If you want to separate them, that's fine with me. Elizabeth, will there be a rescission 2.0, reconciliation 2.0 come October 1st?
Yes, there will. I broke a story just a couple days ago that we will be seeing another rescissions package. We know that it will be soon, according to James Blair, and what will be in it, we don't know exactly, but we know it will include cuts to the Department of Education, which I'm really excited to see what exactly. I spoke to Congress members after breaking that news, and fiscal conservatives are very enthusiastic about cuts to the Department of Education being achieved through reconciliation. They can't wait to get another bill.
Yeah. Just to be clear so the audience gets this, rescissions are when the executive tells the Congress, hey, we don't need this money. On the discretionary side, that would be Department of Education, random like PBS, NPR, and says, you have to vote to claw this money back legally, so they do. The reconciliation are the mandatory and tax programs, and they're talking about doing both. So that's interesting. Larry, you first, then Batya.
Rescissions for sure. It'll be bigger but less controversial than the first one because NPR and PBS and Sesame Street won't be wrapped into it.
I don't know about that. Education.
Don't know.
You don't think that Susan Collins is going to be okay with that?
Let's see. They'll have enough votes, I think.
All right, Batya.
And then reconciliation. I think that there will be. But Sean, explain why if it comes after, if the rescission package, comes after July 31st, that's significant for the new fiscal year, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if the rescissions package, they can fit that in anytime, frankly, before, anytime. But yes, because the fiscal year ends September 30th. The reconciliation, they have to wait until there's a new fiscal year, which would be October 1st. So that's the difference. All right, Batya, thoughts on either?
I'm out of my depth. I have no idea.
Okay. All right, let's kind of move rapid fire if we can. Batya mentioned this big trade deal yesterday with Japan. There was also one with Indonesia and the Philippines. They want to get all these done by August 1st. Okay, so that in my math is what, 7 days from now. They have at least, well, they want to do 100 deals in 100 days. My count is what they're at, like 7 now. Batya, how many more deals get cut between now and August 1st?
I don't think it matters. I think Trump is handling this so freaking well. Like, every trade deal we don't get translates into billions of dollars in revenue, right? Because the higher tariff level he levied on whatever country it is, that keeps pouring in. So I don't feel any urgency about that. I love the money. I hope it's going to paying down the deficit. I think it's great.
It is.
And
Yeah.
I just don't
By the
think-
way, I've said this on a couple shows. It didn't get any attention. You realize in June of this year, we had our first surplus in over a decade because all of these tariffs are bringing in revenue that the government didn't expect.
Exactly.
Elizabeth, give me a number, Elizabeth Mitchell. How many trade deals between now and August 1st, not including Japan, Indonesia, and the Philippines?
Well, we got 3 this week, right? So I'm going to go with 5 more. I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know.
Larry, under over 5.
I think it's going to be over 5. Everyone's looking at Europe, but it's these Asian countries that are the important ones because the contract manufacturers in China, they have plants all in these other countries as well. So it's easier for people like Apple and Dell Computer and all these other people to shift their manufacturing to different contract manufacturers in different countries. And that puts the squeeze on China.
Okay, I got a couple more that I want to hit before we get to winners and losers, so I'm going to ask you guys to be a little quicker. Today, Ron Klain is supposed to be testifying in front of the committee, former chief of staff. Here's the question for you, Batya. So far, we've seen 3 Biden staffers take the 5th. I'm going to flip the question. Does any Biden staffer not take the 5th? You don't have to name names. Does anyone not take the 5th Amendment when they're called to testify about Biden's fitness for office? Batya.
The correct answer is no.
Elizabeth.
They're all going to plead the 5th.
Larry O'Connor.
Yes, and she's got very cute, fluffy press secretary hair.
Oh, you think Corinne Jean-Pierre or I was going to say Psaki doesn't have, I'm not going to try to be judgmental on the hair, but you think that Corinne does?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Let me go into the next Biden subject. Joe Biden. I'm going to leave that because you'll see why in a second. Larry, I'm going to start with you. I know this isn't fair, but you're the resident expert on this. President Trump wants the Commanders, the / Washington football team, to change their name back to the Redskins. Is there any chance of that happening?
There is a chance, but I think what'll happen is it'll be a compromise. The name stays Commanders, but they're going to bring back that iconic logo. In fact, they already flirted with it last year at one of the games, and that actually is traditionally, it's actually based on an actual American Indian. The Native Americans love that logo, and they'll sell a lot more T-shirts.
All right. I'm not going to, unless either one of you guys want to weigh in on that. I got one more before winners and losers. Batya, Senator Rand Paul has said that they should test the validity of Biden's pardons by going after Anthony Fauci, prosecuting him. Do you think that there's any chance Fauci gets prosecuted and they test the pardon?
It's a great question. I think an even more interesting question is whether he should be. The pardon was so wild because it suggested that the person pardoning him thought he had committed a crime, right? So, yeah, I kind of want to see what happens there.
Okay. Elizabeth Mitchell?
I think a lot of people want answers, particularly about
I know,
the
but here's the deal. You have to, in order to test the validity of the pardon, everyone that I've talked to says you actually have to prosecute them. They have to say, I have a pardon. And then you have to test that. You say, well, that pardon wasn't valid. So it's not whether they should be. Will they do it to test the validity of the pardon?
I think that if there are grounds to prosecute Fauci, if the DOJ finds that, I'd say they should go for it. And I think they will. And we'll see if that pardon really holds up.
All right. Let's go to winners and losers. Larry, you were late showing up. No one got to see that, but you kept everybody. So I'm going to let you go first. Who is your winner? Who's your loser?
Winners are Trey Parker and Matt Stone from South Park with a $1.5 billion deal with CBS Paramount. Because, CBS Paramount, they're shredding the First Amendment and they knuckle under to Donald Trump and do whatever. Oh, no, that's not true at all. Stephen Colbert was just a failing show. They're the big winners. Losers is Columbia University, having to settle for $220 million and really broad, wide, sweeping new policy changes on campus that will protect students from the Hamas terrorist protesters and release free speech once again on their campus. It's great.
Good call. I thought you were going to say trade deals, and anyway. And by the way, I also thought, I didn't realize it was The Simpsons, not South Park, that that previewed or prophetically the Coldplay concert, which one of my kids was telling me they had a whole thing on Coldplay and getting called out on the Kiss camera.
The Simpsons are like the animated
I
Nostradamus.
know. I need to know if they have like Powerball tickets. Boccia, winner and loser.
Winner's Howard Lutnick, unsung hero of the Japan trade deal. Just an absolute, like I said, they're going to be in 5 generations, young people who are living the American dream in health and security because of this deal that he got through. Loser, I would say, I think the Koberger victim families, I just didn't feel like that was justice. We don't know why he did it. They wanted the death penalty. So I feel a little bit like watching them try to eke out their moment with him. It was really hard to watch and sad.
Great call on that. I felt bad. But I will say, him life in prison. I've always been a believer that the death penalty to some degree is a cop out. Like you get to kill. Like I like him sitting in jail in solitary every day and knowing that he's there.
Yeah, but Sean, did you know that he can get cable in his jail? It's horrible. He gets a TV and he can buy cable. Like it's
well, that's a problem. That's a whole, but that can get taken away.
That's
Elizabeth
also
Mitch,
its own form of punishment. Just keep it on CNN.
Then maybe that's the punishment. You have to watch MSNBC. That's the punishment. That's cruel and unusual. That might be. That's right. All right, Elizabeth Mitchell, who do you got?
I think those involved in the AI industry are big winners. These have 3 executive orders on that yesterday, really moving forward on that issue in a big way.
Excellent call.
Losers, I'll take the obvious one, Obama. He got called a traitor. He's often considered to be kind of this holy, sacred figure by the Democrat Party. But now what he did to hide to push forward the Russia hoax and hide the truth is in the light. And so I'd say he's a big loser for that.
Oh, I always love this part of the show because to me, like that Boccia, like I wasn't all of these issues to me are fun because I think of different aspects of the week and go, you're right. I went rather simple, though. Along the lines of Larry, my loser this week is left-wing institutions. Columbia University, CBS and the Colbert Report, late night comedy are all things that the left dominated, and it's a big destruction of those. Trump is really hitting away at a lot. The first term it was trying to figure it out. This time between the Kennedy Center, they're chipping away at the culture aspect that we've always lost on the right. My winner this week, you guys aren't going to see this one coming. Joe Biden. The guy got a $10 million advance for a book. Now, just to show you the math, most books at the high end, a book is $30. Okay, so if you divide 30 into $10 million for the advance, he's got to sell 333,333 books just for them to break even. So he's the winner because there's no way he will sell any of those books. Not will he write the book. He won't even know what's in it. But the idea that they gave him $10 million, that makes, I'm sorry. I know that kills everyone to know that. But like if he can get $10 million, Hunter's out there going, I got more paintings. More paintings. I mean, that was an embarrassment. Anyway, guys, I love you guys.
Commentary on the publishing industry show.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, though, who really thinks that that's even possible? Anyway, as Larry name-checked before on the Twitter files, Michael Schellenberg is here tomorrow. That's going to be huge. Next week, Robert Cahaley, great other guests coming your way. As always, go to SeanSpicer.com. Sign up for my free newsletter. A VIP subscription is always welcome. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.